on hot topics with people who don't share your same beliefs. Your host, Sabrina Protic, Dr. Katrina Esau, and Gary Rogers. Now let's get ready to have that conversation. Uncomfortable Conversations is powered by the Trendsetter Mentor Group, an exclusive membership for mentorship on Facebook.
Good afternoon from sunny Florida, and it is beautiful here. I am just enjoying the weather. Look at Dr. Katrina's got that beautiful background there. How you doing?
I am good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Let me go ahead and open up the show. Welcome to our viewers around the world to Uncomfortable Conversations. My name is Sabrina Protic. I am an author and I am a life and financial coach. The name of my book is Growing Ageless, Think Young and Live Younger. I have my wonderful co-hosts with me today. We have Gary Rogers, retired Canadian football player and founder of Check Your Game. We also have Dr. Katrina Esau, author of the book Pain of Fidelity, Birth's Purpose, and the Blueprint to Becoming Whole. And she's also the founder of Whole. That's WHOLE. Those are acronyms, the Whole Academy. Dr. Katrina, how's your husband doing? What's going on there?
He is doing well. He's doing much better. As you might know, he actually this past Saturday tested positive for COVID, which was kind of out left field. He started having symptoms on Friday. It just seemed like a regular cold. He thought it because, when he went out and ran, it was pretty chilly Friday morning, and he just had a t-shirt on. So we started there, and Saturday things progressively got worse. And so it's like, okay, let's go to urgent care. But he's doing much better. We're on, I think today is day 5. So we're halfway there. But thank God, he's still, he hasn't had any issues in terms of like breathing and things along those lines. So I'm just grateful for that. I can take the chill and the body ache. I say that because it's not me, but, and just, of course, as a wife, it's like, oh my God, you hear all this stuff, but when it touches your home, it's different.
And thank you for sharing it with us. So I'm told that first 24 hours, you kind of know something's a little bit odd. So you went right to the walk-in clinic. What was that, about 24 hours, 48 hours? What was that?
Yep. It was about 20 because it started Friday, and then Saturday morning when we got up, same thing. But like I said, he had, the body aches had kicked in then. And I'm like, it just sounded too much like COVID. I'm like, I'm not going to wait another day to see. I'm like, let's just go. So thankfully we're at a place now where it's easy to find somewhere to get tested. So it was literally 5 minutes from the house. We were able to go into Abbott Health, and, they got him in, saw him, they tested him both for COVID and for the pneumonia, and pneumonia came back, not pneumonia, for flu, which came back negative, but COVID came back positive. And what she says, usually it takes like 25 minutes to get the results, but his immediately.
Wow.
Came back. So she was like, go straight home, 10 days, today starting day 1 in quarantine. So we've been stuck here, he's quarantined downstairs. So it's an experience. He's like, honey, can I come back? No, you can't come back to the bed.
No. Hey, I already have a contingency plan in my household. I've already thought it out. If one of us gets it, they're going to be on the other side of the house. I already got that plan in place. So you know what, just like we have hurricane plans, we have to have a virus plan. What can happen, and be ready to separate your home and just kind of know how to handle that. So thank you so much, Dr. Katrina. Gary Rogers, tell us about your weekend. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. It was a busy weekend. Family, friends from Cincinnati, they've been down here to visit Florida for spring break and came over the house and cooking. I think everybody came over, and I've got this little baby grill. It's like just a little small grill that had like 15 people, and I was cooking everything on that baby grill. So all I did was grill,
Well, You know what? We're not going to feel sorry on that because men love to be that cook on the grill. Don't they, Dr. Katrina?
They sure do.
They love owning that space. Just what am I flipping now on the grill? So I know you enjoyed that. So thank you.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about our mission. What are we all about? So we come together every week to enlighten, encourage, and empower our viewers to have that uncomfortable conversation on personal and social issues that affect all of us. Last week, we had a very uncomfortable conversation on the topic of Stop Asian Hate. And we were able to listen and learn from Sarah M. She was a survivor of the killing fields in Cambodia. And we got her perspectives on this rise in tension and violence that we see that's affecting Asians. Sarah mentioned that she chooses to focus on the positive events in her life versus the negative things that happen in their life. And basically, she just fills her life with gratitude. Gary, you were there and present for that interview. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I loved hearing from her. I love listening, and I had a few questions for her. Things I'm not necessarily supposed to ask all the time, right, Sabrina?
Yeah, you did.
I gotta go there, Dr. K. I go there. I gotta just. It's on my heart, and it's just like I don't know what's gonna happen. Are they gonna get rid of me this week? Is this gonna be the week? And so I'm not sure. I know Daryl's watching. I'm like, Daryl, he may not like this, but I'll tell you what was exciting for me as well is that I got to meet Sarah, I think a couple days later with Sabrina's, her book. She's a part of this book, which was pretty cool. Congrats, Sabrina, on your chapter.
Thank you.
And what is the book called?
So it's top 25 change makers. Do you have the book, Gary? I got my book. Here, wait a minute.
I have it. I just can't find it. Let's
Here
see
you
what
go.
that. Yeah.
Top 25 change makers. So that's my book. Gary actually came to my book launch, and so did Sarah. So that was the first time he got to meet her post interview. So again, Gary, what are your thoughts? Kind of summing that up. The whole, and we had Lee Tran there also. She shares a story from her journey fleeing from her country, and so they both are products of what we see now with the violence and tension. I want to call it tension.
Yeah. And so you asked me, Sabrina, like she wants to stay positive, think about the good things. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with going back and sharing stories and talking about a lot of times it's all this adversity that takes place. But what Sarah was saying is she's not focusing on that. And I get it. I believe the same thing. You need to think of positive thoughts, but like, why do we think of positive thoughts? Like, is that like we went to some kind of motivational speech and they said, think positive, and that's the way to do it. And you can trust them, or Sabrina or Dr. K says it, or our parents have said it. Like, who is it that says it to do that? And when you do that, you get good results. So that's the question I was thinking about. And I'm going to read something. I'm not going to tell you where it came from, but this is kind of where I get my source. And I think, I know Sarah does too after talking to her and getting to know her. But whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And so those are some words that I take to the bank. I don't take anything else to the bank. Motivational, people can share things that are, of truth, but anyway, this is powerful for me. But I think, anyway, that's just my 2 cents on Sarah.
Thank you. We know where that came from, don't we, Dr. Katrina? I saw you nodding.
Sure do.
Yeah, we know. And those of you that's on the same vibe with Gary, So it's going to go without saying, we know where that came from. And thank you for sharing those positive words. And Dr. Katrina, a little shift here. We have another topic in conversation that needs our attention, that's becoming more and more uncomfortable to talk about. And this is the issue of wearing face masks. Does it or does it not save lives? So we're going to talk about wearing face masks in public. Gary, I want to share these numbers with our viewers that represent our loved ones that have fallen in death over the past 12 months. What we have these are statistics. We looked the research up. We crossed over 564,139 lives. 33,337 in New York. 49,696 in Illinois. And 23,542. And out of those, about 560,000 deaths. Now, let me go back to one number I missed here. I missed two numbers here. We want to talk about the top 5 states in the coronavirus. So California is leading the way at 59,700. Texas, 48,416. And Florida, our state, that's at 33,337. Then we mentioned New York and Illinois. So, wow, those are huge numbers. And we got our data from the Worldometer. And according to that, 417,262 were Americans that were over 50 years old. So think about those facts. The Spanish flu of 1918 killed 675,000 Americans in 2.5 years. And already, I'm going to go back to this one number, we're at 417,262 already. Now, that Spanish flu happened in 2.5 years. We're a year into the pandemic, and we're edging up on that 600,000 number. So that's pretty profound. What do you think, Dr. Katrina?
Wow. It's just hearing these and looking at these numbers is unbelievable, honestly. And it every time you hear it, though, it just stings in a different way. And, I was talking to a friend, and it was like, death has always been there. Death is inevitable. We know it. But when you hear it like in volumes like this, and perhaps, I don't know what the numbers were pre-COVID, that's not something I followed. But when you hear it like that, it's like, wow. And it's happening so quickly. Like you said, these numbers are over a 2.5 year span, and we're just hitting the year. So it blows my mind. And especially, to see Florida, we're what, third?
We're third. Yeah, we're third. So that's pretty powerful. Dr. Katrina, these numbers are off the chart. And I don't think most people were aware of them, but we're becoming more and more conscious of the death rate and what to do about it. So here's a question. Are we becoming uncomfortable saving lives? Ooh, what does that question mean? We're not trying to draw a line in the sand, but we've invited one of our guests, David Hart, to the show to get his perspectives. David Hart is the founder of M3 Linked Florida, and we want to get a little bit more information from David on his perspectives. He's right here in Florida, and we're state number 3. And what we're going to do is we want them to describe themselves in 3 words and the why. So our producer, Daryl Johnson, mentioned that David Hart, again, is founder of M3 Link. So in David's world, he deals with people. He has a networking organization. And so he would be one that would really weigh in on this because his role is to bring people together. So we're going to talk to David a little bit about what changes he made in his networking group and why, and his views on face masks. But before we do, we're going to go to a quick break.
Wow, this thing is really spreading, huh? People are buying masks, all paranoid. Why? Our healthcare workers need them. They need PPE. I've never heard of that. I don't know what it is, but I'm here to support it. Look, the U.S. Surgeon General even says stop buying masks. They are not effective in containing the spread of coronavirus. That's a real tweet from March. How do you pronounce this? Fauci? Have you seen this guy? I guess he's in charge. He's the mousy looking guy. Wait, Mousy the Fauci? Is that how you pronounce it?
What's up, man? How's it going?
What's up, man? Hey, what's going on?
Whoa, what was that? What did I just see?
I painted the house a few years ago and I have them. I've had them. I don't know what to do with these. Our nurses need PPE. Powerful prayers from everyone. I'm gonna send one up now. Dear God, please tell me what PPE actually stands for. I don't know what it is. People would hate me if they caught me with this. What do I do? Do I take it to the hospital? We gotta get rid of them.
Dude, you're on your own. You're on your own.
No, you're an accomplice now. hide this like a dead body. Come on. Summer's almost here. We flattened the curve. We do what we had to do. We stayed at home. We washed our hands. We're good to go. I do have some masks around here a little bit, but that's just if I fly or something, if I remember it. You just gotta wash your hands. Yeah, actually, my Aunt Gretel knitted this out of one of my old sweatshirts. Yeah, it is thick and suffocating. Kind of like her. So, thanks, Gretel. Slowly getting out of quarantine, seeing a couple of new people, stimulus check cashed, and I tell you what, we're gonna be laughing in a couple months that we ever had to wear these things. Hey, we're gonna be fine. Oh, I just wore this for like 30 minutes in the grocery store. There's no way someone could wear this all day. Couldn't imagine. I mean, hundreds of thousands of doctors and nurses do, but no, I don't believe it. Well, it turns out we do have to wear these. I think. Fauci, I think, says we should, but the president doesn't. But some governors say we have to, some don't. But my mayor does, and then I haven't talked to my dad yet. Who do I obey? Hey, fam. Well, yeah, what's the restrictions like in your area? You got indoor dining? Wow, no, we're just patio. Yeah, we think that, just started the mask mandate. Oh, do you smell that? What does that smell? Oh, it went away. I think so. Oh, it's just my breath. What about you, Uncle Pete? How's Texas? You went to a carnival and did a kissing booth? Wow, I didn't even know they do those anymore. Forgot my mask. I gotta get used to that. Aunt Barbara, how's California? I didn't recognize your number, by the way. Is it a new number? Oh, you're calling from jail? You got the mail without having your mask on. Wow, okay, so they're really cracking down out west. I forgot my mask. Does this okay? Can I do this? Okay. You can tell a lot about someone by the way they wear their mask. You ever thought about that? Follows the rules, cheats the rules, lowers it to talk, is an idiot, doesn't wear it at all, Republican. Okay, I'm just kidding. Wow, you got the whole shield and everything. But while you're here, I have a couple pipes I need welded together. Do you have the rest of your welding gear? Because that's a welder's mask. You look like a fool. I keep seeing drunk drivers on the road. It's terrible. I know, it's just these guys, they're by themselves with a mask on in their car. So they gotta be hammered, right? Why would you do that? You gotta get COVID from your steering wheel? DUI probably. Democrat, Republican. That's the point of these. Yeah, did you know that? I just got back from the store and I watched this guy, dead serious, pull off his mask to sneeze. I wanted to be like, achoo, I'm an idiot. That's the whole point of these. Yeah, Josh, let's get out of here. You're gonna get a mask or you're gonna keep doing the bandana? So are we gonna take an Uber there or your horse? I guess we're going to the saloon. Who even has a bandana anymore? Get a mask. I just got back from Trader Joe's. There's this big dude, no mask at all. I mean, I hate him, but also respect him. The only thing in his cart were 2 huge avocados, if you catch my drift. That takes some courage. Oh, they should have masks on in this TV show. Oh my goodness. Wow, getting used to that. What mask should I go with today? I might just go simple surgical, maybe this fun like gray one, a little pop of camo for fun. I don't know. Oh, I just wish I could get to the beach, travel without all these complications, One time I wish I got into politics. They're doing whatever they want. Gotta make sure I have the essentials before I leave. Phone, wallet, keys, mask. Hate that is a thing now, but let's grab something to eat. We can't sit inside and it's too cold to sit outside, but they built a new inside, outside, and that's allowed. So, yep, been on a few flights. It's still, you gotta wear your mask, very strict, except when they check your ID, every single person that passes through takes it off. When you're on the plane eating or drinking, they serve you that, you take it off. They serve it all at the same time to everyone, so. Do you see our anti-mask buddy got COVID? I hope he can't taste anything from mine. Can't taste those avocados. Remember how we thought this all would be good for the environment? New record. I just counted 83 masks at the local park. One was on a bird, it couldn't fly. On the bright side of things, it's nice to go back to not having to wash my hands. That's gonna...
Very interesting video. It's videos like that. They draw a little humor, but they're really underlying messages. So I thought those guys, it made you watch. So there you go. It made you watch. So welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversation Show. I'm Sabrina Protic here. We've invited to the show David Hart, who is a guest, to have this uncomfortable conversation with us, co-host. We're becoming more and more conscious of the whole situation with masks. And the question is, are we becoming uncomfortable with saving lives? That's our topic. So wearing a mask could possibly raise health issues that have proven to save lives. We kind of want to get some perspectives on this. And when we say proven, we've done some research and we have data. And that's so when we say proven, it's basically coming from the research that we found from the CDC and other sources. So Dr. Joshua Schniffer, associate professor in the Vaccine and Infectious Disease Division at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, stated, masks have saved far more lives than any other biomedical intervention for COVID-19. Ashish Goyal and Brian Mayer research group designed a mathematical model that demonstrated that if the percentage of people wearing masks increased by just 25%, that the effectiveness of masks improved by the same amount. It would easily push reproductive numbers below 1. Cases would decrease rather than double weekly. So then the question is, why are we having this social war with scientists on the matter of wearing masks? I'd like to get the perspectives of David Hart. He's our guest. Let's get his perspectives.
Thank you, Sabrina. You mentioned a couple things there. You mentioned models. You mentioned prevention. And I would take 2 points on that. When you say a mask, are the studies using a fresh mask or a mask that somebody's been wearing for 3 weeks? I mean, because as you wear them, they develop bacteria and other things that can grow in them. And the other challenge is, I think people that are wearing masks for long hours, maybe touching their face or other things that kind of lessen the value or protection of the mask if you touch your face or things like that, because it's just natural to do things like that. But it should be more of an overarching approach to say, wash your hands more and use a fresh mask every day, or what's the type of mask? Because we've seen all types of masks out there where some may be of the quality to prevent the spread of germs, and some may be too porous where they may allow them in if it's a loosely knit fabric or something like that. You know, getting back to the point about models is early on, back in March last year, we heard a lot about models, but many of those models proved to be really off. And so I think we need to, I think wearing the mask is important because it is some protection, but we need to probably boost the standards of what types of masks we're wearing and how often to change them.
Briefly, we mentioned at the top of the show, you have an organization, M3 Link, which is it's really a social networking group. It's a business networking group.
Correct.
What measures did you take in place to comply?
Launched on March 10th with our first in-person meeting here in Florida. And then on March 12th, the state of Florida shut everything down. And it took us about 4 months to reinvent ourselves, to go from in-person meetings to virtual meetings. And now we're still in virtual meetings, just trying to find a technology platform that would be suitable and work around it. And it actually turned out to be more favorable using a virtual platform because it's a lot more convenient for people to attend events. You do miss out on the human interaction, but you got to make the best of it based on the situation that we're all in.
Well, thank you. I just wanted you to weigh in on that because I know a lot of groups are going back to meeting, and David's being a little bit more conservative about that. So that's on the area. The question was, are we getting away from saving lives? And so that's the value of life is very important. And David has demonstrated that even in his group. Let's get a perspective on this from Dr. Katrina. What do you think about this whole, we saw that video. David just brought us some excellent points about the quality of the mask and the cleanliness and those types of things. What are your views on that?
I agree. I mean, I'm definitely a proponent. Do I like wearing it? Absolutely not. But if it's going to, protect me and somebody else, then that's what I'm going to do. I didn't know how much how I felt as much as I do recently because I'm in my house and I have to have it on. But it's for the protection of me and the protection of my husband in hopes that, we can get through this process a whole lot quicker without transmitting it to me. And I think David brought up a great point in terms of frequency and then the timing of the mask. Like with my husband, I'm always on him, not that he doesn't wash his hands and stuff like that, but he's a touchy-feely person. So even we're in the store and he wants to touch this or lean on this, I'm like, get off of it. I'm like, you can't do that. And, and giving people their personal space. But with his job, they have to literally wear the mask 12 hours, the whole entire shift that they're in there. They have to have the mask on. So to David's point, you have it on that long. And so what you're doing, you're pulling it down, occasionally to breathe, you're touching stuff, And so even though you're wearing it and you're trying to be cautious and protective, if you're touching it all day, you're pulling it down. We always joke because I'm like, honey, you can't see it coming. So, you pulling it up and pulling it down like you don't know. And so I think it's one of those things where we have to just do our part. It's maybe uncomfortable. Maybe you don't like it. You can't breathe, whatever. But do it for you and for, others, for your family. Like my husband and I, it's just the two of us in the house. We take the necessary precautions, and he still, did end up testing positive for COVID. But then when I think about your 12 hours in a warehouse and you're pulling it down, up and down, you're touching stuff, you're constantly, and he's one that, again, he likes to touch his face, he's in his eye. So it's just, I just think we have to do our part. And I know that it's been a long time. So some people are just kind of over it. And the more I think we, get away from it, and we're seeing it, we're seeing the numbers are continuing to climb because people don't want to comply. People don't want to wear a mask. You don't think, I've gotten so programmed. As soon as I walk in the door, I don't touch nothing other than the doorknob, and I'm straight to the sink to wash my hands before I put up anything. So that's my 2 cents about it. It's, definitely not one of those things we want to do, but I think we just have to do our part.
Coming from someone who has a family member with COVID in her household. So thank you. Gary, let's kind of get your view on this. So remember, there's a war. We mentioned a war, this pulling and shoving. Scientists and doctors and doctors and scientists and scientists and doctors. We got this war going on. Wear a mask, not wear a mask. Wear a mask, not wear a mask. We just saw a video. What are your perspectives on this war? This pushing, not whether one's right or wrong, but what are your perspectives on the pushing and shoving and not agreeing and coming to one conclusion?
Well, that's perfect for this uncomfortable conversation because, man, we can go all kinds of ways, and just everybody, the millions of people that are watching, they'd all be fighting. No, right, that's good, that's bad. I mean, you know what? There's so much going on with this whole mask and COVID and different things, but I think what's most important is when people are sharing, there needs to be this consistency, like if you say one thing, you do it. Don't say one thing, Dr. Such and such, and then next week say something else, then switch it up. Don't say you're about wearing masks. You want everybody to wear a mask, but then you get a video shown, somebody's in the, getting their hair done and you're not wearing a mask. I'm sorry. It goes both ways, goes with everybody. Just consistency in life is so important. And right now, Sabrina, you share all these statistics. There was a day when we needed to go to the library for statistics. Then with internet, we could trust the internet. We're like, hey, you want to know what's going on? Get on the internet. And now I believe we're in an age where, internet, it doesn't mean much to me. If somebody says, anybody can say anything they want on the internet, and I just don't trust it. I don't think a lot of people trust it. So when I hear you talking, sharing statistics about different things and seeing the inconsistencies with people and seeing all the stuff around, sorry, Sabrina, I love you and I trust you. If you tell me something, seriously, you tell me something, I believe it. But when you're sharing something from somebody else who I don't know, or I've seen on TV and not being consistent, well, I don't take those words to the bank. Like that last episode, Dr. K, where we were taking it to the bank, I'm not taking these other people to the bank.
Well, Gary, this is why Gary Rogers is a co-host on this show. So we're going to get the real deal from him, and he ain't taking it to the bank. And so, Gary, just so you know, and just so our guests know, I said, if you notice, I introduced the source of the data. Because when you start throwing numbers all over the place, people are going to, well, who said that? Well, when did they say that? Where did they come from? So I'm going to make sure that I list the source of the data. But like Gary even said, we all know numbers can be numbers and people are people. So what do we really know? We're just throwing those numbers out there. So we're listing the source of our data. And but I think I've heard many times, since when did you get your degree? From Google? People want to go get research, they Google. And we got a lot of college graduates from Google on science and medicine. I kid you not, I've heard more people become doctors because they saw, I've taught the people who have taught this whole mask and doctors and this and that, never had any kind of background in medicine and no kind of background in science, but now they're all scholars in it. And I'm talking on both sides. The pros, they're just as much against or for. So we just want to put this out there. This is that uncomfortable conversation. And it's a pleasant one because we want everyone to have a perspective. I really love David Hart's perspective, analyzing the mask, the cleanliness. Dr. Katrina, you brought up, I've seen some creative ways that people wear masks. Haven't you? Mm-hmm. Under the chin, above the mouth, nose, this way, that way. I'm like, really? So, that's another conversation, but we're going to go to break. And when we come back, we're going to compare this to the Spanish flu and see how we stack up.
Began shutting down businesses a century ago as influenza swept the world, and we began to realize that it was close contact that was helping to spread that virus. Historians will tell you that we made mistakes in 1919. Our Jeremy Hohola looks at whether we might learn from them.
When I look at faces in old black and white images, I wonder what those people would tell us. History sometimes screams at us from silent photos and archives as we make the same mistakes over and over again. Are we listening? Are we going back to that time and learning enough from history?
Well, we certainly should have learned from them to be prepared. They were scrambling to make masks at that time.
Dr. Stephen Leonard, a longtime history professor, and History Colorado historian Sam Bach spoke to me about the 1918 flu pandemic in our state.
They didn't know that outdoor gatherings were a problem, and so they didn't shut those down.
1,500 people died in Denver, about 8,000 across Colorado, millions of more souls around the world.
I can remember the day that my dad said he was going to call the doctor.
11 years ago on this station, we heard firsthand from Rose Worth, who was just a child in Colorado back then. She lost a baby sister and her parents.
And the minute he said she had the flu, I just knew I was going to lose her.
Back then, Leonard says initially elected officials dismissed the flu.
So we had a few weeks notice that it was on its way, or likely on its way. But what we did, at least initially, was pretty much head in the sand. We didn't want to admit that it was here.
Denver and Colorado began shutting down some businesses, but pressure to reopen grew.
I think the mistakes that public officials made really were in lifting gathering restrictions too early.
Theater owners who were financially hurting convinced public officials to let them reopen. Outdoor gatherings were allowed.
So in easing on restrictions, they really created a second bump, a second spike in cases of the flu that killed many more people.
What could we learn from that time period that we could apply to what we're experiencing today?
Well, social distancing is one thing that we certainly could learn if we haven't already.
As we've seen today, not everyone has taken social distancing seriously, with Denver even citing some businesses for refusing to shut down.
It's very similar. People were doing stupid things then, and people are doing stupid things now.
The old cliche, history repeats itself, exists for a reason. I hate to use it in this report, but it's true. We do have the power in the present to listen to the past.
So I think what's happening now is a test of our sense that we're all in this together.
There is no excuse for us. We've known a lot about the 1918 flu for a long time, but nobody mentions it. So we're the victims of our amnesia.
For Next, I'm Jeremy Hohola.
Wow. I'm reminded there's nothing new under the sun. Welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversations. Health Day News stated, though masks are effective in stopping the spread of COVID-19, half of Americans do not wear them when mixing with the public. That is a key takeaway from the ongoing study of more than 6,000 U.S. adults by researchers at the University of Southern California, Dornsife Center of Economic and Social Research. Even though 83% of American adults view wearing a mask as an effective way to protect themselves from COVID-19, their behavior is inconsistent. Talk about consistency, Gary, and often high risk. Researchers found 2/3 of respondents said that they were in close contact with people outside of their household in early December, but only about 51% said they mostly or always wore a mask at those times. Wow. Sabrina?
Yeah, and I want to remind our viewers that what we're evaluating here is whether or not to wear the mask. How important is safety to you and to save lives? So our topic is saving lives important to us, and the value that the mask may or may not hold, whether or not we should wear the mask? That's what we're talking about today. Now, I'm going to give you a bunch more statistics. I know Gary said the numbers are numbers, but we have to put these numbers out here as a source from which we can evaluate, should we or should we not wear masks? So it says white people were least likely to wear masks. Up to 46% said they always or most always wear a mask when with people from other households. That compared to 67% of Black respondents, 63% of Hispanics, and 65% of others. The researchers found this data. In rural areas, only 42% of people wore a mask always or most of the time, while close to people outside of their household, compared with 52% of suburbanites and 57% of people in cities. Researchers said 21% of people who visited someone else's home wore a mask most of the time, while 14% of Americans gathered in groups of 10 or more, only 46% said they wore a mask most or all of the time during those encounters. These findings indicate a need to redouble efforts to convey consistent messages about the overall importance of wearing masks. But more than that, where and when masks are worn, says Ari Captain, director of the USC Dornsife Center. So based on those numbers, what are your perspectives on wearing masks in public? We've got a few minutes. What do you think about that, Doctor?
I think that we need to do that. If you're around a large number of people, then you need to have it on. It just is what it is. If you are, with your home by yourself, whatever, then you don't necessarily need to. But if you're out in the public, I think you should have the mask on. It's for your protection as well as somebody else's. And the thing of it is, it reminds me of, we say social distancing, and I'm reminded of personal space. We've always been taught, don't be in people's personal space, but some people violate that. And so at least if you have on your mask and somebody is not distancing themselves from you or enter your personal space, at least you're protecting yourself.
Great perspective. Great perspective. So now we've got those numbers. We have the data. We've heard from Dr. Katrina. We're going to go to a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to further unpack this topic of should you wear a mask.
Empty streets, closed businesses, people stuck at home, all because of a pandemic. Lately, Kearns has looked a lot like it did in 1918. How do we know? Because a piece of that history is still living.
I've heard about the flu in 1918. Do you remember that?
Well, I had it too. Didn't feel well at all.
Jewel Hudson was 7 years old when the 1918 flu pandemic broke out.
That's right.
Today, she's 109 and still remembers it well.
I remember how we hurt and had fever and had to stay in bed.
Jewel's dad had gone to take care of a friend who was infected and unknowingly brought the virus home.
And the rest of the family began to take it. Everybody in the family had it.
Jewel's older brother took the family's covered wagon to a neighboring town to pick up a nurse who helped care for her family. They all survived, in large part because they stayed home, but a lot of people didn't. Because of World War I, most Americans didn't even know there was a pandemic and went about life as usual. As a result, 1918 was, and still is, the deadliest pandemic in modern history. Around the world, nearly 500 million were infected and more than 50 million died. And in America, life expectancy in 1918 fell by 12 years.
Did you fully understand how bad it was?
No.
Jewel says this pandemic is a chance to remember our history, to learn from our mistakes and not repeat them. Which is why Jewel says it's important to follow recommendations and put others before ourselves, because she's seen what can happen when we don't.
They've learned what they should do, and they should follow the rules. And I think it's important for them to try to be as helpful to everybody as they can and not spread it around to somebody else.
Because like Jewel, we all deserve to have a long, long life ahead. In Kearns, I'm Sean Giggy.
Wow, that is phenomenal. I mean, her whole household got it, but then she said she wasn't educated on it either. Did you hear that? So that was, go ahead, Dr. Katrina.
No, I was just saying, yeah, that I was just amazed just listening to her share, you know, and then just the lack of knowledge, like people did not know it. Even listening, I'm like, how do you not know?
They didn't know, they weren't educated.
But they did know.
They didn't know. A reminder, that was Jewel Hudson. She's 109 years old when that was videotaped, a North Texas woman. And she shared her experience. She lives to tell the story, but it was lack of education. But then once they realized that they complied. So, you know, we had this conversation before the show. I says, I'm a compliance person. I'm going to wear the mask. If anybody want to know my perspectives, I am about compliance. So whatever it is that is recommended, that is what I'm going to do, because I personally don't have enough knowledge myself, and I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor. That's not my field of expertise. So I'm going to comply. But we did see some interesting numbers on the way people complied when right before we went to break. So here, we're going to kind of recap that, Dr. Katrina. Some people choose not to wear a mask. Some people choose to wear a mask. The phenomenon, the physiologically and psychological side of it, you know, some people are resistant to it. So this is where people vehemently believe they have the freedom. So now we're going to talk about the freedom side of it, my choice, the freedom to behave how they wish and to experience negative emotions when this freedom is threatened. And so they become motivated to resist. So the psychological reactions it's an unpleasant motivational arousal that emerges when people experience a threat or loss to their freedom. So it becomes not just about whether this is right or wrong, or we should or shouldn't. Someone's taking my right away to choose. This is how people are feeling. My freedom is being threatened. I should have the right to decide what I'm going to do. And so you may find that a lot of people are standing alone on this issue of rights and freedom, rather than should we wear a mask or shouldn't we wear a mask? Does it save lives or doesn't it save lives? What is the data proved? So an example of such behavior can be observed when an individual engages in prohibited activity in order to deliberately taunt the authority that prohibits such an item or event, regardless of the utility or disutility of that activity, or whether it, protects an entity or a segment of something, a thing, a place, or society. An individual's freedom to select when and how to conduct their behavior, and the level to which they are aware of the relevant freedom and are able to determine behaviors necessary to satisfy that freedom. So things that kind of affect that can be generation, psychological resistance, family issues, cultural issues, the way I was raised, and, the country I live in. All of these things can play a role. It's assumed that if a person's behavioral freedom is threatened or reduced, they become motivationally aroused. Wow, that's a different term for me. Motivationally aroused. When I think about arousal, I do think about some type of action when you're aroused to do something. And that action can be to vehemently stand against something or to stand for something. It's a certain type of behavior. Let's bring our guest on. Let's bring David Hart on so he can, let's also bring in Gary, David Hart and Gary. So we kind of saw a few things happen where, people say they wear it part-time, they wear it sometime, depending on who they're with, depending on where they are. We just saw this video with this woman back with the Spanish flu, and her whole household got it. They weren't educated. Now we just learned that with some people, it's just strictly a matter of their freedom, their right to choose. And when you threaten their freedom, it doesn't matter whether we should or shouldn't wear the mask. We have to stand on our freedom. So let's go to Dave Hart. What are your perspectives on this?
I think there's some rebellion against wearing the mask because we're being told by politicians and other elected officials to wear the masks, but then there's endless sightings of them doing everything that's contrary to that. Going to a dinner without the mask, being in a large fundraising thing without a mask, but they're telling you need to wear a mask, but then they go and do the opposite. And it really makes it hard to give the statement of wearing a mask credibility when our leaders don't even follow their own advice. And that's, it's a challenge. We all have to play by one set of rules. And, we should learn more from the 1918 flu. And, we should have been better prepared for this when it came around, because these things happen in cycles. But if you got people in a leadership position saying wear a mask, but then they're being videotaped not doing that, or exercising their power to get around it, it really makes it hard for others to follow their advice when they don't follow their own advice. Do as I say, not as I do isn't a really good or effective tool or way of messaging.
Interesting perspective. So David's standing on leadership. So David's stating that
lack of leadership.
Or lack of, do as I say, not as I do. So what David's saying,
when the politician's waving their hand at you, you need to wear a mask, but then they're at a party without it, or and there's the other challenge is there's a lot of inconsistency on how and where masks should be worn. You got to wear it. It's like we're all here in Florida. To say that you have to wear a mask to enter a restaurant, but the second you sit down, you can take it off. It's like, how does this make any sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing that I do find, David, is there'll be a big sign to wear the mask, but you might see 5 people walk in without it. Nobody says a word to them. So you're complying. You have your mask on. They don't, and they still get seated. They still get served. Nobody enforces that. So, I think that also is determining whether people wear masks or not. We're talking about where people, should you or shouldn't you? Well, some people are getting discouraged about wearing it because, I wear mine, but I can have a person standing right next to me in a restaurant. They don't have theirs on. So we don't even think about, should you or shouldn't you? But if you're one person, you're surrounded by 10 people that's not, then you might not put yours on. So.
defeats the purpose.
Yes, yeah, it really does. Let's hear from Gary. I don't know what Gary's going to say about this. Gary, can you weigh in on it? We never know what's going to come from Gary.
I'm just going to let everybody know right now that I'm getting kicked off the show. This is going to be my last.
No, Gary, don't do it.
I'm just kidding.
Don't do it, Gary. Don't do it.
I'm just kidding. I was taking a few notes. Okay, so I take a few notes because I kind of forget a few things other than 1918, because 9/18 is my birthday, so that's how I remember that. All right, that's besides the point. So this is what I think. As far as, like Dave was talking about, when these politicians, people in leadership roles are saying one thing and doing another thing, of course, that's hard. How can you believe somebody when you hear this and then you see something else? But I'm thinking about everyday people. We all have a responsibility, and I'm not even talking like mask stuff. I'm saying, like, if you believe in something, then follow through with what you believe in. Like, for all people, everyday people, I don't know why I was thinking about this, but I was thinking about, let's just say a teacher, teacher for kids. They say to their kids, like, drugs, say no to drugs. They're the health and science teacher. Say no to drugs. Don't do this, don't do that. But then on the weekend, illegally or whatever it is, or whatever they're doing. But I don't think a teacher should be saying, say no to drugs, and then on the weekend doing drugs. I don't believe somebody should at work say, treat women right or treat men right, and then on the weekend or after work, they're doing something bad to their wife or somebody else. Like, I think we all have, this big theme of, we all have a responsibility. I think just, and who cares about the political leaders, like, we all should be like taking responsibility to let our actions follow what we say and believe, like, let's not, everybody, if we say we're an apple tree, let people see apples. I'm not saying they always going to see apples, it's going to be consistently, perfectly apples all the time, the best tasting apples. But for the most part, we all, I think, have a responsibility just to come through with what we say and who we are. And that's the thing. That's why Dave was saying, and that's why I think lots of people can't believe things. And it's more than just COVID stuff. It's everything in general. You can come up with all kinds of scenarios. And with this technology we have today, man, you can't really, it's hard to get away with it. You got two angles. You got the tight angle and you got the wide angle. So if that tight angle didn't get you out here, the wide angle, because you know what? There's hundreds of phones going off when you're doing something, so it's like nowadays you just can't get away with things.
Wow. I just, there's so much that's going through my head right now, because I think you're spot on. We're both going to be kicked off, Gary, but it's so important. Just I just be your authentic self. Like, stop saying something and doing something completely different. That's the stem of it. You brought it up very early on in the show around consistency, and we've all touched on it. Like, that whole thing that we've been taught ages ago by our parents, do as I say, not as I do, does not work. People will do what they see you model. And so if you don't want somebody to do something, then don't model it. And, it feeds into why there's such a fight and a war, as we talked about early on, between whether it's the doctors and, whoever. But, Sabrina was talking about with the restaurants, her and Dave, and, you walk in, there's a huge sign that's covering, you can't even see the glass because it says you must have on a mask to enter. But then you let people in and you don't say anything. And I have my mask on, I'm doing my part, I'm complying, but you're not applying it. So that's why people don't take it, seriously. They don't take it for real. They either don't pay attention or they don't respect it. And it's because we don't do what we say. We don't enforce it. You got some that tell you, to do it, and then you see them, like you say, in photos or videos or what have you, and they're not implementing. They're not even doing what they said to do. And so it all ties into, being your authentic self, taking personal responsibility, your personal branding. All of this stuff speaks to it. People don't think about it, but when you show up like that, when you're inconsistent, that's how people are always going to see you. as inconsistent. They don't just compartmentalize who you are. So I think we have to keep that in mind, that it is our responsibility, as an individual to not only do our part, but to make sure that we are showing up and that we are demonstrating, because we are modeling, to our teens, or modeling to our youth, young adults, we're modeling to people all over, even if it's adults. I always say somebody's always watching. Somebody is always watching you. So we have to make sure. I may not say a word. There are times when I don't say a word, like my actions will speak for me. Like show up and, do it as a parent, as an adult, put the darn mask on and, and protect yourself, protect other people. I can't say it enough, like take responsibility, forget whether it's right or it's wrong, but we have to be mindful of what we're modeling to others. And we have to get away from that mindset and that paradigm that was instilled in us as children, to do what I say and not as I do. It does not work. As Dave said, it's not effective. And we see that it doesn't work because they do the complete opposite. They do what they see you do. So this has been a great conversation today, Sabrina.
Well, it has been a great conversation, and you nailed it right before we go to break. Personal responsibility. We've all talked about what's happening around us, what people are and aren't doing, scientists, politicians, but what are we individually doing? So personal responsibility, personal accountability. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll wrap this up.
In 19, we had the Spanish influenza. That was memorable.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. We didn't dare play with anybody. Had to stay away from kids, absolutely, because kids seem to be the biggest carriers. And I lost a few friends that I used to play with all the time, but they died from flu. And I remember one time a mother asking me whether I was mad at a certain boy. I said, no, why? Well, she said, he just died. And Sunday morning, we'd go to Sunday school. And you didn't sit next to it. There was always a space between you and the next person. Sat that way. The pew in front was empty, and the pew in back was empty. Then another pew like your own with kids, and again empty. The church only had about 1/3 of its capacity because of all this emptiness. That's the only way we had. For Christmas, at church, we got a bag. It was an apple in there and some cookies with a little frosting and maybe 2 pieces of chocolate wrapped in some paper. That was Christmas. That's all. No money.
When was the epidemic or the pandemic over?
I'd say about maybe 2.5, 3 years. I'd say maybe 90, maybe 21.
So did it take a while for things to get back to normal when the pandemic was over?
No, I don't think so. I was in high school at that time. And no, I just, financially, we still needed money, sure. But health-wise, I'd say we didn't have to be concerned. It was licked, yeah. I hope it stays licked. I hope.
Wow. Things we can learn by listening to people who've gone through those pandemics. And I tell you what, my key takeaway out of that, it took a couple years. You know, we're all thinking, oh, we're a year into this pandemic. This needs to be over and done with. Well, historically speaking, look at what that 109-year-old woman said, 2.5 years it took. And then he just said it took a couple years. So we're not quite done yet. And this is why this topic is so critical. We're going to do a little recap here. COVID is dangerous with a significantly higher fatality rate than the seasonal flu. Everybody says it's just a flu. It's sure, it's a strain of the flu. But remember, a higher fatality rate. So when we compare the minor inconvenience of wearing a mask to the chance of guarding against the admittedly unlikely, because we're not saying everybody's going to get COVID. That's not what this show is about. The prospect of a terrible outcome, isn't it rational then to consider wearing a mask, at least in the riskiest of situations? Like you would have insurance. You know, why do we buy car insurance? You aren't planning on having an accident. You're protecting yourself in case it has, you have an accident. So think about it. If someone who really cares about pursuing and protecting his or her own self-interest and really looking out for themselves, someone who's really concerned about themselves, carefully, they would consider the evidence, just like they would with the diet. You know, the way we eat, the way we exercise. Look at the effort we put into knowing about those things. We read about them, research. We even talk to professionals about them. So why wouldn't we do the same thing with wearing masks? It's our personal health that could impact not only our lives or others. So let's take the time to learn and educate. As it happens, there is mounting evidence that suggests that wearing a mask protects not just ourselves, but others, our neighbors, our family. A recent meta-analysis of 172 observational studies of COVID and similar respiratory infections suggests that even simple surgical masks lower the chances of getting infected compared to wearing nothing. So do something, even just a surgical mask. David talked about the different types of masks, but some layer of protection is better than none. But there's also some evidence that those wearing masks who may still get infected are more likely to only have asymptomatic cases that induce immunity because masks reduce the viral load. So yes, there are stages and conditional steps, but some measure we're suggesting with the data is better than no measure at all. So let's get some final thoughts. We're going to go to David on this. Final thoughts on what we just talked about, personal responsibility, some measure of protection. David, where do you stand on that?
I'm totally in favor of personal responsibility. Too many times we don't hold people accountable for their actions. Being responsible, wear a mask, think about others, be a little conscious about the mask that you're wearing, make sure it's clean or fresher. If you're going to be wearing one for 12 hours, you might need to change it during that 12 hours or something like that, because one mask should not be designed to be worn all day. The other big takeaway is history repeats itself. So we should respect things that have happened in history and, favorable or unfavorable, respect it, learn from it, and let's try and make it so we don't repeat it. Because when we forget history, things repeat. And that's probably why we're seeing people getting tired of wearing masks, because they don't want to look at the history and see what we can take away from that.
Great perspectives, David. I see Gary just kind of thinking along those lines. So Gary, we have history that suggests that these types of pandemics go on for more than just 1 year. We're only a year into this. In terms of personal responsibility and what the road that lies ahead and present, what are your thoughts on wearing a mask with respect to what we just discovered?
You just had to make sure you said that again. Say, stay on topic, Gary. Stay on topic. Because I want to go off topic. If I could sing it, I would. I want to go off topic a little bit because, you know what? I see, like you see this history repeating itself. But what I think is I see things are getting worse and worse. And I don't know if anybody would disagree. Just look around, look at the news, look what's going on. Just lots of stuff's happening. And this is just a part of the game of life. You know, you can learn about it. There's books. There's just the most sold book out there, I think, in the entire world out there, Dr. K. You know what I'm saying about that? It talks about that. It talks about that. And you know what? So let me get back on the mask thing. You know what?
He can't help it. He can't help it. He had to do it, Dr. K. He had to do it.
You know what? I don't know. I don't really trust people that are sharing stuff. I don't know, but I do wear a mask. If I go into a place and it says wear your mask, and that's a part of it, then I wear my mask. I try to follow rules because, man, I've got some beliefs, and it says, you know, listen to your mom and dad, treat others with respect, love your neighbor as yourself, you know, like, and so I do that because of where my foundation, what that, you know, just because of that. But I'm just not sold. I just have a tough time, Dr. K, when I have these medical doctors sharing all this stuff, and it's just back and forth. And it's just hard. It's just really hard. Like, I'm not sure really who to believe. And I don't think I'm the only one in the boat with that one.
Wow. Well, that's honesty, and we want the perspective. So, Dr. K, you want to lean in on this? Dr. Katrina?
Listen, I'm gonna leave it there because I know that we are running out of time, but I feel Gary. I really do feel Gary with his perspectives. And I think we all do to some degree because we've all touched on it. And it's just a matter of the inconsistencies, you know, people doing things and, you know, saying one thing and doing something else. You know, there's so much back and forth, you know, and it makes it so much harder to believe. And I'm one, you know, I lean on my faith a lot. You all know that. So it's at some point it's inevitable. It's going to come up, you know, it's going to come up, it's going to come out. And so, you know, here I am walking through it. You know, it's been all around me for a year now, but to have it in my home, does it change my belief? Absolutely not. Does it change my perspective? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not so much. I'm still going to do what I've done. You know, like I say, I comply. I wear my mask, and I don't do it just because somebody's telling me to do it. I want to protect myself. I want to protect, you know, my husband, my daughter. And so I do it because, it's just a small thing I can do, whether I believe it's right or it's wrong, whether I have my own beliefs about the numbers or, you know, if they're all really COVID, you know, I have my doubt, you know, Gary, you're not alone, but I'm not willing to risk not doing anything, as Sabrina kind of touched on in the closing. Just do something, whether it's right, wrong, the right mask, the right frequency, I don't know. But what I can tell you, you know, even just having this conversation, when my husband goes back to work, thanks to David, you're going to have to change your mask out at lunchtime, you know, because it's not made for 12 hours. And so you do those little things, you know, and it's important to me. You know, I always tell people, I'm like, I'd rather get sick than my husband because, you know, he's just men. I'm not going to say men, but.
You can say it.
He's a big baby. He's a big baby, but I love him. And, you know, it's concerning. It's concerning to me because I just want him to be okay, you know. So I'm going to keep doing my part is my position on it. I don't believe the numbers, but I'm still going to do my part and, you know, take it a step further. You know, that mask has to be changed out at lunchtime. It's been 6 hours, you know, throw it out and put on a new one. So, but yeah.
Thank you for your honesty, Dr. Katrina, and Gary, your honesty, David Hart, your honesty. As far as I'm concerned, do your homework, do your research. I really have not done that. So that's what I'm going to say about myself. I'm more of a compliance person. They say, do this, do that. And I haven't. I'm going to say about the numbers that I don't know. I'm going to say, I don't know. Because one of the things that I said with numbers is that, you know, what was reported previous. So I don't know. But what we do know is there's a virus, a flu, whatever you want to call it. We've seen historically with the Spanish flu, a couple years it took to get past this. So what are we going to do to get us through the next year and a half? What are we personally going to do? Because this is not over. So we're going to leave with that. What are you going to do? We encourage you to do your research and then take personal responsibility and accountability for yourself and your family and those around you. I'm Sabrina Protic. We want to certainly thank Dr. Katrina Esau. We want to thank Gary Rogers. We want to thank David Hart for being brave enough to talk about this topic, because it can arouse people, as was said today. It can arouse people. I've seen it, been in conversation. It gets pretty warm. So we're going to leave it with that. Our viewers, stay tuned. Next week, we'll have another uncomfortable conversation. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. Oh, before I do, I need to thank our show's producer, Daryl A. Johnson, who put this fine meal on the table for us today. He always brings up uncomfortable conversations. We want to thank Alan Chafin, our engineer, who we couldn't do this show without you, Alan. So thank you again. Thank you, viewers and listeners, and we'll see you next week. Bye.